George, I'm going to make you host.
Yeah.
And with the captioner, would you please type a few more captions for tests so I can see if it's on YouTube? Thank you. Perfect. Captioning's coming across on YouTube. Thank you.
Patty, I'm going to mute you.
Oh, yes. Yes. To everybody who's in the meeting, this is Patty. I just heard from George. His power just went on and off, so he is trying to reconnect. So he'll be with us in a minute. Hopefully,
All right.
because if he's not, whew.
Joyce, are you still there? Your host. So you'll need to let him in.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, just so, well, I guess I could let him in too as far as.
Do you want me to go ahead and
admit-
Charlotte in?
Should we go ahead and admit everybody else in
Oh,
Charlotte?
okay.
And Christy, Erica, Latoral? I'm assuming we'll go ahead and admit everybody.
Oh, okay. All righty, everybody in for my end.
Hi, everybody. For those who just joined, George is the leader of the meeting, you know, but he just called to say that his power had gone off and come back on. So he's having to reconnect. So if we can just give George a minute.
Hi, can anybody hear me?
I can, George. This is Patty.
Okay. I guess I'm in the meeting proper now. So I do apologize, everybody. My power went off and my internet hasn't come back on yet, so I'm just on by phone. But welcome to the March meeting of the Public Guardian and Conservator Advisory Board. Patty, can you tell me if we have, I guess, at least 5 members in the meeting? Okay, looks like my internet's back on.
Yes, George. I'm sorry. I'm chatting away to myself. Yes, there are 5 members here.
Okay, if you give me just 1 minute, I'll be back in the meeting. And
Okay, good morning, everybody. I apologize for that. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. Looks like everybody's here. I'll start with some housekeeping announcements. But just to let you know, this meeting is being live streamed, and I'm going to start the recording now. Actually, Betsy or somebody, if you could make me co-host or host, please.
Yes, Joyce. Oh, the cart captioner is host. Okay, that needs to be fixed. Captioner, I apologize, but could you make George the host when you click on the more button and just make him host?
Yep.
That happened. All right. If you need help, okay,
Okay.
great. George, your
Okay.
host.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm starting the recording now. Okay, so I'll start with the housekeeping announcements, and then I'll do a roll call for attendance, and then I'll turn it over to our chair, Christy Zed, to start the meeting. So due to the active state of emergency, this is an electronic meeting pursuant to item 4-0.01G of the 2021 Appropriation Act and section 2.2-3708.2A3 of the Code of Virginia. Meeting notice has been provided. The meeting is being recorded and minutes are being taken. All votes will be conducted by a roll call of voting members. Meeting materials are posted under the Public Guardian and Conservator Advisory Board's quarterly meeting tab at the link shown on this slide, vda.virginia.gov/boardsandcouncils.htm. Members of the public are able to live stream this meeting via the DAR's YouTube page. Please be advised that if the live stream is interrupted, we'll need to pause the meeting until it is restored. Public comment will be accepted by email or phone to my attention. Public comments that were received by yesterday, March 14th, 2022 will be read or, if lengthy, summarized during the meeting when we reach that agenda item. So I'm not going to go through all the Zoom functions, but just remember muting and unmuting. And before you speak, if you could please state your name, as this helps your colleagues on the board know who's speaking, and it also helps Cecily with documenting the minutes. Please only use the chat. Please only use the chat feature if you have a technical issue or other issue not related to the business of the meeting, as chat comments are not captured in the live stream or the recording, and so they're not available to members of the public. And if you'd like to view the real-time captioning of today's meeting, please click on the CC button on your menu bar and select Show Subtitles. Zoom participants will be able to turn on closed captioning, and the YouTube stream will automatically include the captioning. For all votes, we will do a roll call per the bylaws for electronic meetings, and you will be asked to indicate your support as A or yes, opposition, nay or no, or abstain. And lastly, I'd like to thank the DARS video teleconferencing team and the DARS communication team for making this electronic meeting possible. So I'll do a roll call now of members to confirm attendance. James Almond.
They'll go.
All right. Okay, yes, James Allman is here.
Okay, thank you, Judge Almond. Betty Doherty.
Betty Doherty, present.
Thank you. Susan Elmore.
Susan Elmore, present.
Kathy Harkey. Okay. Kimberly King.
Kimberly King is here.
Monica Karavanik.
Monica Karavanik is present.
Rose Palmer. See her. Lindsay Pickrell.
Lindsay Pickrell is present.
Thank you. Tara Ragland.
Present.
Latroy Roxburgh,
Here, present.
Donna Smith,
Donna Smith, present.
Ming Truong. Good morning. Your volume is very low. I can barely hear you, Ming. No. I'll go ahead and continue. Erica Wood.
Yes, I'm Erica Wood. I'm here.
Thank you. And Christy Zed.
Zed then.
Okay, so we do have a quorum. Christy, I'll turn it over to you. And when we do introductions, we'll include all the guests who are with us today as well.
Hey, thank you. Welcome everyone to the meeting this morning, and we will go ahead and call the meeting to order. It is 10:10, I think, according to my clock. We will do a brief introduction. I am Chris Zed. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Richmond for Developmental Services at Richmond Behavioral Health Authority, and I am currently the chair of the board.
Christy, would you like me to just do a roll call? Might be easier.
Sure, that's usually easier on Zoom.
Okay. Judge Almond, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm James Allman. I'm a retired circuit court judge from Arlington in the City of Falls Church, and am completing 8 years on the advisory board this June.
Thank you. Betty Doherty.
I'm Betty Doherty, and I'm the Director of King and Queen Social Services, and I'm representing the Virginia League of Social Services Executives.
Thanks. Susan Elmore.
Good morning. I'm Susan Elmore, and I am retired from the Commonwealth of Virginia, and I'm a healthcare manager.
Thanks. Kimberly King.
Good morning. I'm Kimberly King. I'm a community integration manager with the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services.
Thanks. Monica Karavanik.
Good morning. My name is Monica. I am the current Director of Operations at the ARC of Southside in Danville, Virginia, and I am occupying the seat for the ARC of Virginia.
Thanks. Lindsay Pickrell.
Good morning, I'm Lindsay Pickrell. I am an attorney with Thompson McMullen in Richmond, and I am representing the Virginia State Bar.
Thanks. Tara Ragland.
Good morning, I'm Tara Ragland. I'm the Division of Licensing Program Director at DSS.
Thanks. Latroy Roxburgh.
Good morning. My name is Latroy Roxburgh. I'm an LCSW and I'm a member.
Thanks. Donna Smith.
Good morning. I'm Donna Smith. I'm the CEO for the Eastern Shore Area Agency on Aging, Community Action Agency, and I'm representing the V4As. Thank you.
Thanks. Ming Truong.
Hey, Joel, can you hear me better? All
Yes.
right. Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Ming Truong with my paid job is Program Manager Energy for the Navy, and my volunteer job is Director of Senior Club here in Hampton Roads area.
Great, thank you. Erica Wood.
Yes, good morning. I'm Erica Wood. I'm a member of the Virginia Commonwealth Council on Aging, and I am in the slot for the liaison from the Commonwealth Council to the board.
Thank you. And our guests, Marcia Dubois.
Good morning. I'm Marcia Dubois. I'm Deputy Commissioner for the Division for Community Living here at DARS.
Kathy Miller.
Good morning. I'm Kathy Miller. I'm the Director of Aging Programs and Services in the Office for Aging Services within the Division for Community Living at DARS.
Thank you. John Carpenter.
Good morning. I'm John Carpenter. I am the Director of Administration at the Division of Community Living here at DARS.
Thank you. Catherine Harrison.
Good morning. I'm Catherine Harrison. I'm the Director of Policy and Legislative Affairs here at DARS. I'm happy to be with you this morning.
Thanks. Charlotte Arbogast.
Hi, good morning. Charlotte Arbogast with the Division of Policy and Legislative Affairs. At DARS, I work under Catherine.
Thanks. And staff, Patty Meir. You're muted.
Hi, I'm Patty Mayer, and I am the coordinator for the Public Guardian Program here at DARS.
And Cecily Slazer.
Hi, good morning. I'm Cecily Slazer. I provide support to our 3 aging boards and other things here at DARS.
Thanks. And I'm George Worthington. I'm the Dementia Services Coordinator and staff to the board. Thank you. So turn it back to you, Christy.
Thank you, George. We like to start the meetings with a reminder of why we are here by reading through the powers and the duties of the board. So 1, to assist in the coordination and management of the local and regional programs appointed to act as public guardians and conservators pursuant to Chapter 20 of Title 64.2. 2, provide advice and counsel on provision of high-quality guardianship services and avoidance of conflicts of interest. 3, promote the mobilization of activities and resources of public and private sector entities to effectuate the purposes of this article. And 4, make recommendations regarding appropriate legislative and executive actions, including but not limited to recommendations governing alternatives for local programs to follow upon repeal of the authority granted to the courts pursuant to Code 64.2-2015. To appoint the sheriff as guardian or conservator when the maximum staff to client ratio of the low program is met or exceeded. And finally, submit to the department October of each odd numbered year, a report regarding activities and recommendations of board to be posted on the department's website. And now we will move to approve the agenda. Does anyone have anything that they would like to add to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move we adopt the agenda.
Stopped.
Jamal.
Recording in progress.
Okay, first motion, second motion,
I second.
Monica. Thank you. The agenda is adopted. So the first.
Sorry, I'll need to do a roll call vote for that,
Oh,
Christy.
okay, sorry.
So James Allman.
I vote yes.
Betty Doherty.
Yes.
Susan Elmore.
Yes.
Kathy, Kimberly King.
Yes.
Monica Karavanik.
Yes.
Lindsay Pickrell.
Yes.
Tara Ragland.
I say yes, but I'm not sure if I'm supposed to vote.
Yes, you are. Latroy Roxburgh.
Yes.
Donna Smith.
Yes.
Ming Trong.
Yes.
Erica Wood.
Yes.
And Christy Zed.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion is carried and the agenda is adopted.
Okay. Thank you, George. Next, we review and approve the minutes from the previous meeting, was on November 9th, 2021. If you could take a minute or two to look at the minutes, if you've not already done so. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Okay, hearing none, the minutes are adopted as presented. Okay, the next item on our agenda is public comment. George, was there any public comment?
There was not, no.
Okay. Thank you. The next item is the Division for Community Living report. Marcia?
Well, hello again. This is Marcia Dubois. Have just a few updates for you all from some of our programs. Virginia Grand Driver is taking a new approach to promote safe driving among older adults. We've created the Rad Driver Totally 80s Workout Tape, a series of short exercise videos designed to help older adults improve coordination, flexibility, and maintain strength to drive safely. The exercises led by adult group trainer and personal fitness trainer Wendy Chin are approved by an orthopedic doctor and physical therapist. George can send the link to the video out to you all after the meeting. And I encourage you to please share the exercise series with your community and help us promote the videos and other resources available through Virginia Grand Driver. Also, the No Wrong Door team revised its rack card to include information on No Wrong Door Direct Connect and the No Wrong Door Person-Centered Portal, Virginia Easy Access. We're excited that the current version is not only available for print to display, but also available in an electronic version this time that will be posted to the No Wrong Door webpage and provided for partners to place on their pages. George can also send this out to you all as well. Also in No Wrong Door, the online journal Social Work Today, a national publication, featured Virginia No Wrong Door in an article recognizing it's being one of 2 winners of the Administration for Community Living's and Office of the Assistant Secretary of Health's 2020 Mental Health Innovation Challenge, which was issued to bring together entities helping address the dual issues of social isolation and loneliness. Sarah Link, Virginia No Wrong Door director, is quoted in the article as saying, "One result of the vast number of resources is that they are sometimes underused. 27,000 is all of the services available in Virginia Navigator, although not all are for social isolation and loneliness. People aren't always aware of even things like area agencies on aging. They exist across the country as a whole network, and they're funded under the Older Americans Act, which was signed into law in 1965. There are 25 in Virginia." Under the leadership of both Virginia No Wrong Door and United Way Worldwide, the goal is to increase awareness of such resources while decreasing social isolation and loneliness across the Commonwealth. That article also, George can send you all the link if you'd like to read it further. On our nutrition programs, the 2021 season data has been completed and features information from Farm Market Fresh Virginia Senior and WIC Farmers Market nutrition programs. Overall, Virginia had a total redemption rate of 80%. Our Senior Farmers Market finished the year at 83%, and our WIC Farmers Market finished the year at 59%. There were 198 authorized farmers that sold their goods at 66 farmers markets at 27 roadside stands. Senior Farmers Market program reached 10,254 participants, and WIC reached 3,939 total participants. Virginia received expansion funds in both the senior and WIC farmers market nutrition programs. With that expansion funding, the seniors farmers market brought the Central Virginia Alliance for Community Living into the program on the senior side, and the Cumberland Plateau on the board for the WIC side. With the help of our colleagues, we successfully developed an interactive map of locations, and we saw new success this year with partnerships between growers, nonprofit farmers markets, and housing facilities where mobile markets were strategically placed to reduce transportation barriers in at least 2 new areas of the state. We also welcomed Harrisonburg and Lynchburg into the program. On another note, DARS has received a waiver of the limitations placed on the amount that may be expended for home modifications as stated in the Older Americans Act regulations. This request was based on the fact that due to higher cost of materials and supplies, since the federal regulations were put in place, the current limit of $150, can you imagine that, is insufficient to adequately and meaningfully address identified home modification needs. The Administration for Community Living granted a waiver of the limit for home modifications to allow DARS and the AAAs that offer this service to increase the cap to $500 per client with Older Americans Act funds and give DARS the authority to authorize up to $1,000 as individual situations warrant. As you can imagine, this was a welcome relief given the cost of supplies for making such modifications. Also, on a final note, ACL issued the new Expanding the Public Health Workforce Within the Aging and Disability Networks funding to help cover the cost of staff to conduct critical health activities. Professionals funded through this program may provide a wide range of public health services and supports, including culturally affirmative and linguistically accessible information, assistance with accessing vaccines, including boosters, and connecting to other services, transition and diversion from high-risk congregate settings to community living. Health and wellness programs, activities that address social isolation and social determinants of health, and other activities that support the public health and well-being of older adults and people with disabilities. Networks and organizations eligible to receive these funds within the DARS network are included below: independent living designated state entities, and that would be our statewide independent living council. No Wrong Door systems, state assistive technology programs, that's called VATS here at DARS. Our SHIP program, which would be our VICAP program, state units on aging, that would be our area agencies on aging, and our traumatic brain injury state partnership programs, that would be a TBI grant that our brain injury program received. And so those that funding will be disseminated in a variety of different ways depending on how those grants were received. But that means that those public health professionals will be hired by those various providers to provide that critical work. So that is it for me, unless anyone has any questions.
Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is the legislative updates with Catherine Harrison.
Good morning. So I know everybody's probably aware that we're kind of in a little bit of a holding pattern right now. There are some things that have come out of the General Assembly, but we're still waiting on the budget. And there are some bills that are still in conference, but those should be resolved when the governor calls the General Assembly back in to finish their work. So I'll talk a little bit about budget amendments, but I'm not going to linger on that since, we're still waiting to see what the final end product will be. So it's all just speculation at this point. So this was the year of guardianship. I'll say that. I know that the folks from JLARC came and met with y'all before, and that they presented on their report. So there were a slew of bills put in this year as a result of that JLARC report. I'm not going to go over all of them, but I will try to touch on sort of the higher points, because we could spend a whole entire meeting talking about the various roads they went down and changes, and it's very easy to get whiplash watching them go back and forth and change. But for the most part, before we sort of dig into sort of the ones that revolved around this larger omnibus bill, I did want to make sure that you were aware that their House Bill 96, which was put in by Delegate Head, which requires a decennial review of the staff to client ratios for the public guardianship program, did pass. And so that was a JLARC recommendation. Delegate Head also had a bill in that would have created a public guardianship program ombudsman office, but that one was left in appropriation. So that was sort of a take on the larger sort of ombudsman view that the JLARC had envisioned for all guardians. This one focused on the public guardianship program, but it's dead at this point. So in the House, you had multiple bills dealing with various different recommendations of the JLARC report. Delegate Rome had several bills, and then Delegate Hudson and Delegate Glass also carried bills. In the Senate, you had more of an omnibus bill that was put in by Senator McPike. And some of the items that were included in that omnibus bill or in the various House bills touched on several different areas that JLARC had recommended. The first being with required training for guardians. And then it also required DARS to provide that training. And this would include public and private guardians. So this would be something new for DARS, this foray into the world of private guardianship. It also required DARS to provide training to the local departments of social services on the changes to the public guardianship report, as well as some other things. DARS was also to get a work group together and create a report on the creation of a visitation program for people who are currently under a guardianship order. This was based on a program that's been a pilot program up in Northern Virginia. Also, there were changes to improve the reporting system, the guardianship reporting system within DARS. And also, then this was a really big one. DARS would have become the receiver of complaints about guardians, both public and private. So almost creating like a navigator type of a program. There were significant changes to the public guardianship program. There were significant changes to the annual guardianship report. Some of these were based upon additional provisions that were in the law, as well as just beefing it up in several different areas. There were requirements in the original omnibus bill and in a House bill about the frequency that guardians would have to visit in person with the individual under the guardianship order, as well as some requirements as if they had somebody else doing the visits for them, how often that could be, so on and so forth. There was also a requirement for a periodic review by the courts 1 year after the appointment and then 3 years thereafter. That could be changed in the order as well. There were requirements about notification and when visitation was restricted, or restricting the ability of the individual to see someone that they had a relationship with. There were notification requirements and a process put in place for that to allow more transparency for the individual whose visitation may have been restricted. There was notice of the guardianship hearing. There was additional language added to that notice, as well as who would need to be noticed of those changes. There were also changes around the guardian ad litem, as to the guardian ad litem would need to notify the court if the individual who was subject to the hearing wanted counsel not whether or not they thought they needed counsel, but if they requested counsel, they would need to report that to the court, as well as providing information about why they didn't think less restrictive alternatives were appropriate. So after all that is said and done, what got through, well, in the House, you had House Bill 623, which was Delegate Hudson's, which dealt with the guardian ad litem requirements. That passed both houses. Delegate Glass's House Bill 1212, which dealt with the notice of the hearing, and that got out. That passed both houses. Delegate Rome's House Bill 634, which originally dealt with requiring in-person visits at a certain frequency, was substantially changed and is now a Section 1 bill that requires DARS to convene a work group to look at that issue. And that did pass both houses. On the Senate side, you had Senate Bill 514 with Senator McPike. And the final version, which passed the House and the Senate, includes the provisions related to guardian ad litems and also the notice of the hearing. It also adds additional requirements of information that must be included in the annual guardianship report. So there's a significant change between what was introduced and what got out. I imagine we'll probably see another another slew of bills probably next year as well. I think this is something that folks are probably going to be coming back around to. And this has been going on for a couple of years, and the JLARC report, I think, gave folks concrete recommendations. So I imagine there will be more bills again next year, but that's where we stand right now. In the budget, the Senate had included money for many of those items that were originally included in McPike's bill. The House did not. So also some other bills that might be, does anybody have any questions before I move on, or would you prefer for me to just go on and then ask questions at the end? Any preference? Okay. Not hearing any, I'll just keep trucking. So there were a number of bills dealing with APS, or adult abuse, neglect and exploitation. House Bill 95 provides some clarification. This was another bill by Delegate Head that there have been some sort of angst from financial institutions about whether they could or could not provide financial records. And this clarified, yes, they need to provide those records to APS, and also added some language about providing them to guardian ad litems. I think that they felt like it kind of gave them a little bit more cover within that area. House Bill 98 was another bill by Delegate Head, which dealt with creating an APS registry, and that did not pass, but we're expecting a letter, and we'll be looking at that, probably having a report back to the chair of HWI. In criminal code, they changed the term incapacitated adult to vulnerable adult. This is a bit more encompassing than that term had previously been used, and some clarifications there. For going into long-term care, there were bills again this year about staffing standards. They didn't make it out. However, Senator Spruill's Senate Bill 40, which deals with involuntary discharges from assisted living facilities, did pass, and this was pretty momentous. I think folks, a lot of advocates have been wanting this for a while. There was sort of a hole in the ALF world. In the housing world, you have protections, and through the nursing facilities you had protections, but in ALFs you did not. So this is hoping to address those as well. House Bill 234, which with Delegate Orrock was the patron of, the Secretary of Health and Human Resources is to have a study looking at consolidating oversight of nursing facilities, ALFs, and other congregate living settings under a single state agency. Right now they're spread out between DSS, VDH, and then also for House Bill 917, which was Delegate Orox, which deals with services provided through the area agencies on aging. It clarifies that in allocating resources, they're to look at the individuals with the greatest economic need, and then amongst those with the greatest social need. So on the budget, what came out of the House and the Senate, like I mentioned before, the Senate had funding in for the related guardianship legislation. The House did not. On both sides, there's language, though the language is different, about continuing the Elevating Aging work group that met last year, continuing that work group. And on the Senate, there is another study to have the Secretary evaluate restructuring DBHDS. I thought this might be of interest to some folks. There wasn't the same amendment on the House side, it was only on the Senate side. DMAS, on the Senate side, there's also an amendment to have DMAS develop a plan for a 1915I waiver, which would allow them to provide home and community-based services to individuals who may not meet the waiver criteria. And they can, states have fashioned these in all different ways. So what it would look like, is sort of yet to be determined. Also, the Senate included language that would allow them to combine the caps for assistive technology, environmental mods, and electronic home-based monitoring. Right now, I believe they're capped at like 5,000 each, but instead you could have an overall cap of 15,000, which would allow some more flexibility with those funds for serving individuals. There was just over 112,000 each year for dementia case management in there, just over 900,000 for each year for the long-term care ombudsman as well. So those are just some of the high points, and I'd be happy to, and like I said, those, it's not over till it's over. And so, it's anybody's guess as to what's going to come out in the final budget for those, but I'd be happy to answer any questions folks have.
Catherine, this is Patty. Did you want to talk about our money for the PGP? Did I miss it?
Well, I was only going over what was in the conference report, and not what was in the governor's budget. So if nothing was changed, that was introduced in the governor's budget. So there was money in the governor's budget that would provide funding to even up the amount paid for slots so that they were on equal footing, because there were some slots that were paid at a differential rate, sort of basically based upon when they were issued, and help to bring that into alignment. And there was also additional money, and Patty, correct me if I'm wrong, for some additional slots too, wasn't there?
Yes, 300, yes.
Yes.
Which would be the largest increase this program has ever experienced at one time. Yeah.
And so none of the amendments on the House or the Senate touch that.
So they're good. They look like they're progress. That's still all.
That's a good sign. That's a good sign that nobody fiddled with them. Like I said, It's not over till it's over. Don't want to jinx anything, but it's typically a good sign when nobody's fiddled with it.
And those were unrestricted slots.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? Yeah. Sorry if I put you to sleep. I know it kind of rambles on a bit.
Can I ask a quick question about the equalization? So when that goes through, all the slots should be reimbursed at an equal amount, and then with the 300 new slots, are they going to be reimbursed at the same amount? And are there any implications going forward?
And Patty, correct me if I'm wrong. There's still some slots that are going to be paid at a higher rate based upon the population, correct?
It's a category, yeah. It's
Yeah.
the DPHDS referrals from state hospitals, which is only 98 of our slots.
Yes. But the new slots will be paid at that equalized rate.
Yeah. Yeah, and all other categories, they should be all paid at the same. Yes, so it's based on the 4 eligibility categories. So in 3 of the eligibility categories, including the new slots, they should all, we ask that we get enough money so that they all can be paid at $5,000 per slot per year. And for the DBHDS ID slots, I mean MH slots, it'll be $7,000 per year.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Catherine.
Thanks for having me this morning.
The next item on our agenda is the public guardianship program updates. Patty?
Okay. Hey, everyone. So I'm going to get back to those new slots, but man, isn't that exciting? And the opportunity of pay parity for our programs, because there were lots of differences, and you would think they would have been based in geography or type of client or something like that, and they never were. They were historic. So programs that have been with us for a very long time had old kind of slots that were paid at a lower rate, and that penalized them. Newer programs had gotten their money more recently, so they were paid at a higher rate. So they benefited. And so we've tried to, I'm just thrilled that we can address this and get everybody at the same starting point. And I apologize for turning my camera off. I've been told several times on this that I have an unstable internet connection. And so it's better if I don't turn my camera on. Probably easier for you too. All right, so to get to our report, my report, let's see. So you all know the PGP currently has 1,049 clients, and as of December 31st, 2021, the end of the second fiscal year quarter, the reports from the local providers show that the program has 976 active clients with a court order establishing the public guardianship. We had 44 offers outstanding to individuals who had been accepted for public guardianship by a program provider, but they still required a court order to begin the actual guardianship. So that left us with 29 open slots at the end of the quarter. We had 13 unrestricted slots, 7 open DBHDS ID slots, and 9 open DBHDS MH slots. During the second quarter, 8 court orders were entered appointing a new public guardian, and we had 21 public guardian client deaths. With respect to COVID, during the period of May 1, 2020, which is when we began keeping records on this, through yesterday, the PGP providers have reported that 331 of our active and in-process clients had a positive COVID-19 diagnosis. So our in-process clients are the ones we've extended offers to, but we're waiting for the court process to be completed. Of this 331, 29 had died from COVID-related illness. Just to bring you up to date on the client visits and a reminder, for most of the pandemic, DARS had advised local PGPs to make in-person face-to-face visits where possible, but had taken the position that it wouldn't require in-person face-to-face visits. So in those situations, local PGPs were required to substitute an alternative form of visit with any missed in-person visit. These included electronic or telephonic visits with clients, or if that was not possible, an information gathering session with the residential provider. DARS required face-to-face visits to resume as of May 1st, 2021, but in late September, we again suspended the requirement of in-person face-to-face visits for any client living in a community with a high or substantial COVID-19 transmission rate, as designated by the Virginia Department of Health. And you know, they provide that information weekly. Clients not receiving an in-person face-to-face visit are required to receive an alternative visit, as I described. But most local PGPs report to me that they are making visits for most of their clients, despite the flexibility that we've offered. And I'll tell you that most of the state since September has been in a high transmission status. So even though we allowed them not to go make face-to-face visits, most of them were when it was possible. Now, sometimes facilities would be closed. Sometimes facilities would say you can come, but you have to visit outside. And of course, it's the middle of winter. And so that was problematic for some of our clients. But I have really been pleased. And again, this is what I try to reflect to you all the time. These providers we have are remarkable and they are committed. They are, you know, they have their PPE, but and they have their own health issues. Some of them, they are concerned about their own health, of course, but they are concerned about their clients and they get the importance of the face-to-face visits. I'm happy to say that the VDH records reports are starting to show much, you know, the state is turning around, the transmission rates are going down. So this, I'm expecting that there will be even more face-to-face visits resuming and that they will soon be occurring for everyone except for those who live in a residential facility that's experiencing a COVID outbreak. So that's very exciting for us. We had some bad news. In November, Autumn Valley Guardianship advised DARS that it does not wish to renew its contract for 2023. Fiscal year 2023. This is because of some serious health issues affecting its program director. And because of those health issues, it frankly told us that it would like to stop its operations as soon as possible. With 21 clients, AVG is one of our smallest providers. Its territory includes the following counties: the counties of Augusta, Clark, Frederick, Page, Rockingham, Shenandoah, and Warren counties, and the cities of Harrisonburg, Stanton, Waynesboro, and Winchester. So it's our provider in the Valley corridor going on up from 64. DARS is determined that it would be best to do an RFP to find a new provider for the Autumn Valley Guardianship territory and to take on the existing public clients served by AVG. We're in the process now of preparing that RFP. In the meantime, Autumn Valley continues in existence and it has entered into a subcontract with another PGP provider to provide public guardianship services to 19 of its 21 public clients. DARS has approved this subcontract, and Autumn Valley Guardianship is continuing itself to provide public guardianship services to the two public clients that aren't covered by the subcontract. Other issues, we've already begun planning the statewide training for fiscal year 2023. We'll be holding it on the east side of the state this year and have tentative dates of October 19th and 20. Dr. Michael Gillette will be our keynote speaker on October 19th with an ethics presentation targeted toward our program. And besides that, I am in the middle of trying to develop the curriculum. So any suggestions, I welcome them. I'm happy to hear from you. And if you think there's something important to convey, I'm happy to find some speakers on that. Or any of you may want to come and speak if you have something that you think is important. On staffing, you know, Betty Vines left us on September 24th of last year, and her position remains unfilled. We're hoping that we'll be able to fill it soon. We have hired, I'm very excited about this, a part-time person through the end of this fiscal year to work with me to create a program manual for the program, which will be a tremendous asset to my colleagues at DARS and also I think to the to the local programs. You know, it's the hit by a bus theory. And so that is it for the program operations during the last quarter. Anybody have any questions about any of that?
Yeah, I have a question, Patty. This is Erica. Going back to COVID, did you notice, or did the providers find that their cases were more complex because of COVID, considering the consents for vaccine and the closure of or lockdowns of the facility and all of the health problems? Did they suddenly have a caseload that was different and much more complex?
It's interesting. I think a lot of them did find it much more complex. They missed the personal contact with their client. I'm thinking of one program that reported that when they were they had been making remote visits to a nursing home resident, you know, with a nurse using the camera and helping them see their resident. Not very informative though. And when they actually got in to see the client, they found she was dehydrated and probably malnourished. And so, yes, so it was problematic that way. Yes, they had to work vigorously on the consents. Generally, I think they opted toward consenting to vaccinations for their clients unless a doctor had recommended against it. That did not go over well with all of the residential providers. And so that caused complications for them. Day supports were very hard because some of the day supports tried to stay open a little longer, and DBHDS had given them good guidelines about separating separating attendees by their residential placement. But I think that wasn't working really terrifically, and people weren't wearing masks. So yes, Eric, I'd say generally they found it a lot harder. I'm actually thrilled with our numbers. I think to only have 29 deaths, given the fragility of our population, says a lot about the quality of care that these people are generally receiving. I'm very thrilled with that. So that's good news. And that reflects us, but it also reflects the strength of the residential providers, of course.
Thank you.
Patty, this is Susan Elmore. Leading in, that was a good segue. My question was, did you do any type of mortality review or analysis on the 29 deaths to see, you know, if there were any causal origins, like you said, dehydration or anything else that we could pick up?
I did not. I have trusted them that if they felt like it was abuse or neglect or a licensing problem, that they will report it. That is the constant refrain from this office, is that you must report it and you must put it in writing. Of course, we're mandated to report. They are mandated reporters. And they don't hesitate to file complaints with licensing. You know, before I did this job, I was an attorney. And so I feel very strongly that while you might not get the response you're looking for from a submission of a licensing complaint, it is very important to the state and regulators and people looking at facilities to have those complaints documented. If they're not documented, they're not real. You know, it doesn't mean anything. So I have always found that they've done a good job with that, but I have not reviewed each one independently, Susan.
I was wondering if we had any commonalities, you know, across the way or anything, you know, so yeah, just curious. Thanks.
We could arrange to do that when we deepen our staffing a little bit. We might be able to do that.
And do you know were most of them the DBHDS slots or anything as far as that breakdown?
I could find that out. I haven't looked at it. I didn't analyze it for this, but I do have that information.
Just curious. Thanks.
Yeah. So I'm going to share my screen now because I don't know if any of you had a chance to read the report to the General Assembly that DARS submitted for the Public Guardian Program. There's really, I think, a lot of good and helpful information there, and I would encourage you to read it. But I just wanted to go over some of the high points this morning. So I'm going to share my screen here. Let me get to the top. Thought I was at the top. I apologize. Okay, so this is the executive summary. So I'm just going to get right to the meat of it. What we try to do with this report is to provide just an overview of how the program works, to define our providers and the categories of funding and the basic services that are provided, what you can expect of a public guardian in the first section. And then we include a lot of demographic information about our clients, which to me is really interesting and is helpful. I guess, and most of these facts are provided as of the end of the last fiscal year, so as of June 30th, 2021. But this one on age is particularly interesting to me because I think people continue to think of this as a program for the elderly or the aged. And that, in fact, is not true. You can see that for all of our clients, only 50% of them are age 60 or older. So half of our clients are younger people. I think that's really interesting. And then this one really caught my eye. We think of our unrestricted clients as being our traditional clients. And those are commonly understood to be older individuals incapacitated by dementia, a stroke, or a traumatic brain injury, with a few younger individuals with mental health issues thrown in. But if you look at our numbers, you will see that in our unrestricted category, only 6% of them are age 60 or older. The eligibility categories with the largest number of active clients, 60 or older, were DBHDS-MH slots. So the referrals that DBHDS is choosing to send us from the state hospital are primarily their older people with barriers to discharge. And perhaps that has something to say about the facilities where the people are moving to, that with this older group, they're requiring a guardian. The DBHDS IDDD slots, you can see we also have a healthy number of older adults there, a healthy percentage. And then the DARS MI-ID slots. So those are people who are primarily incapacitated with either a mental illness or an intellectual disability or both. They are not referred by DBHDS. This is an old kind of historic group. It's only a group of 40, and they're all from the Richmond area. But that's who that group is. And you can see that they also trend older. So this suggests to me that our unrestricted slots, a lot of our unrestricted slots, like our other three categories, are going toward individuals incapacitated by something other than dementia or conditions associated with old age. So I just think that's very interesting because I think we have throughout the state, people think of us as a program that's primarily serving people who are residing in nursing homes and are older. Not necessarily true.
Patty, could you go back to this unrestricted? I'm not sure I understand the math here. So only 6%, but the categories, they don't add up to.
Well, let me go back. You may have caught an error there. I caught everything, Erica. Let me go back.
Well, it says
that doesn't work at all. You know
No.
what? Maybe that's my problem. Maybe it's 60% there.
That would make more sense.
That would make me feel a lot better. I am so embarrassed. Yeah, I think it's true. I'm sorry I didn't catch that. All right, all my proofreaders. Thank you. Well, good. Good, because I was alarmed when I started looking at these numbers in this way for this meeting. So good. Let's see. We see that 47% of our clients are living in group homes, and 14% are living in sponsored residential homes. And what that tells us is that at least that group, 61% of our clients probably have an intellectual disability because they are living in DBHDS licensed facilities. And I guess the next fact that I thought was really interesting was our turnover. And this is, I went back and looked at the report we filed 2 years ago too. These numbers are pretty consistent. The number of new cases we take on with new court orders every year is right around 100 cases a year. So that's approximately a 10% turnover rate for our program. So every year we're getting an influx of, this many new clients. So 10%, that's pretty significant, I think, and shows the work that our programs are having to do at the local level, keeping slots full. Then we also have some new sections that I really haven't talked about in depth before, or issues we haven't talked about. One is the budget considerations. This, we asked for the new money that Catherine was presenting on. And so we asked for money to pay for new slots and to address the parity issue. And that's all in the 2,487,000. We asked for administrative funds to cover a new staff person. And then you guys will be glad to see this, I think, 75,000 for the study of guardianship. That's the one that's supposed to be done every 4 years, but actually hasn't been done since 2007. So it's good to see that, good to hear that that is living intact in the governor's budget, and hopefully we'll be able to accomplish that. It'll be very exciting. We have a section that discusses our regulatory activities. And of course, this is new. Charlotte has worked on these very hard, the new fast track regulations we put in place to clean up some things that were just old and out of date, and to reorganize the way our regulation reads to make it easier to follow. And then we were also required to do a periodic review of regulations. And you've heard Charlotte discuss this. We came up with some things that do need to be fixed. They are probably more controversial in nature than the ones we accomplished through the fast track. And they are in the process now. They're still in the regulatory process. Section 7, I hope you guys support this. This is where I thought it was really important with all of the conversation around guardianship this year and talking to Jay Lark. I have become aware of really common misperceptions about the public guardianship program that I wanted to at least record this here so that people can refer back to it. And of course, this is for members of the General Assembly, so I'm hoping that some of them will read it and that it will help answer their questions about public guardianship. But of course, you see the first one is that our program standards apply to all guardians appointed by a Virginia court. And of course, that isn't true. We set guidelines through our regulations and contract that apply only to our 1,049 slots. The misconception that any guardian who is not a family member is a Virginia public guardian. Of course, that also is not true. But there are people all over the state, even attorneys who get this, will misstate this. Of course, it is confused by the fact that several of our PGP providers also operate private guardianship programs, and their clients who are served through the private side of their programs are not protected by the regulations of the contract. But that is a little bit confusing to people, so I just wanted to clarify that. Of course, people are always confused and think, and this applies to guardianships generally, that a public guardian provides direct services to its clients. And of course, that's not true. We are legal decision makers, and while I think we do a good job advocating for clients and their needs and overseeing to make sure that they're getting the services they're entitled to, we are not hands-on caregivers. Let's see. And this is a frequent problem that we run into. It's a difficult issue with referrals, the next one, that a public guardian can control an individual's behaviors. And so people sometimes seek guardianship because they don't like the way a particular individual is behaving. And we have lots of discussions with people about that on referrals. A public guardian is a legal decision maker. Public guardian can't control the behaviors of a client. Some of the things we can't do is we can't force the client to take medication, keep a job, stop abusing substances, or terminate a relationship with a person they wish to see and have the ability to contact. And so this gives me a little heartburn. You know, the Virginia Code makes it clear what the definition of an incapacitated person is. At least it's clear in the code. Much harder to apply in real life, and I'm sure courts struggle with this. Courts are supposed to make a determination that an incapacitated person is someone who is incapable of receiving and evaluating information effectively or responding to people or events or environments to such an extent that the individual lacks the capacity to meet the essential requirements for his healthcare, safety, or therapeutic needs without the assistance or protection of a guardian. And then the definition goes on to state that a finding that an individual displays poor judgment alone shall not be sufficient evidence that the individual is an incapacitated person within the meaning of this definition. So whether an individual receives a guardian or not should not turn on the question of whether the guardian would make a better decision, quote, and I'm putting that in air quotes, a better decision, a more conventional decision than the respondent in the proceeding, but whether the respondent in the proceeding is truly an incapacitated person. Are they really unable to make decisions? Again, you know, I think there's a natural tendency sometimes to say, well, this public guardian agency would make much better decisions than a public guardian provider would make much better decisions for this individual than the individual will make for themselves. But that doesn't mean necessarily that the individual is incapacitated. And I think this is an issue we just, you know, it's an old historic issue. We all struggle with it. Everybody knows about it. It is the essence of why supported decision-making has become an issue in the state. And I just think we're going to grapple with it for a long time because these things are not black and white. Judges are the ones that are asked to apply this. And my understanding is, although I'm not a judge and haven't gone to court on these specific issues, that there is no guidance. There are lawyers, you know, work with reported opinions, and there are no superior court and higher court level opinions interpreting this for judges. So every judge is left to decide this and I come to an understanding of these words for themselves without any guidance from a higher level court about how these standards should apply. And then, of course, you know, there's also the question of on the medical side, the psychological side. This also is, there's not a standard way of understanding what an incapacitated person is. But I think we have to be cautious about this. It reflects the tension between people who say that person didn't need a guardian. Why did they get a guardian? Oh my God, their rights were taken away. Versus a need, an inclination we all have to be protective, I think, of vulnerable people. So I just wanted to throw that out there so people are thinking about it. Another misconception is that a public guardian should be appointed wherever there is an emergency need for a guardian. Well, of course, our program isn't structured that way. The General Assembly has not created this program to be the emergency responder for all of the people who might need a guardian. There are only 1,000 slots essentially, and the conditions that lead an individual to be placed under guardianship rarely improve over time. So individuals who receive a slot generally hold that slot for quite a long time. So when emergencies arise, we are often filled. We have a waiting list of equally needy people. We just are not the response to this. An attorney kind of lectured me about it because our authorizing legislation, of course, has a broad goal, is to ensure that everybody who needs a guardian can get a guardian. And so he quotes that to me. And when I say, I'm so sorry, we can't take your person now, he'll have to go on the wait list. There are equally needy people on the wait list. So I think that's an important thing to remind people of. And finally, any compassionate person can be an effective guardian representative for a PGP provider. And I would say that while compassion is an essential qualification for the employees of PGP providers, they have a long list of things they have to understand about the law and services. And they also have to understand things about medical conditions, psychiatric disorders, ethical questions. They have to be mindful of the client's rights, their wishes, their desires. They are the ones that are constantly balancing the question of dignity of risk versus a guardian's role in trying to protect somebody who's been found to be incapacitated. And they have to have sufficient interpersonal skills to be able to work with the clients, the third-party providers, doctors, attorneys, government employees, therapists, residential providers, to be advocates, not just people who are signing any document that's presented for them to sign by a provider. So it's a tough job, and I sort of wanted the members of the General Assembly to understand that. We also discussed the pandemic, which of course is new, and what we've done with that. JLARC and what they recommended and our experience there. Of course, we always include something about our wonderful board. And because the question of guardianship slots and the need for more public guardians and the role of private guardians versus public guardians is moving to the top of everybody's list, I added a new table which shows, as of June 30, the number of people that were on our wait list with each provider in the unrestricted category, the MIID category, and the DBHDS IDDD category. I don't maintain the wait list or have any knowledge of the wait list for the DBHDS MH slots. That's entirely managed by DBHDS staff. But I think the thing that I really want to call out here, call to your attention here, is the outlier. And that is JFS Tidewater with 320 people on their unrestricted wait list as of the end of last fiscal year. Now that is, you can see that that is much greater than the wait list maintained by other providers. This is not because the other providers are doing a bad job. The JFS number represents 63% of all the individuals on the unrestricted slot waitlist for across all providers. And no other provider's waitlist represented more than 8% of the total. One explanation for this is that JFS Tidewater operates a very large private guardianship program. The information I have indicates that there are between 800 and 900 people being served privately by JFS Tidewater. And I think that that number continues to grow because of the great need for guardianships across the state. 98% of the individuals on this wait list were incapacitated individuals who JFS was serving as a private guardian. So most of the 320 are people that JFS is currently serving as the private guardian. As part of its private program, JFS serves a significant number of people who are referred by community hospitals in need of a legal decision maker to facilitate their discharge. And for individuals who are indigent, the way it works is the community hospitals pay JFS Tidewater a fee to provide private guardianship for a relatively short period of time. If the fee period ends before the individual's need for a guardian, JFS Tidewater then places the individual on the unrestricted wait list. So they've stopped receiving payment for it directly, and then they move somebody onto the wait list. So approximately 43% of the individuals of this 320 were individuals referred by a community hospital. An additional 39% are individuals who JFS Tidewater is serving as private guardian for, and who were referred by a local DSS office. And the local DSS offices are paying JFS to serve as the private guardian. And those people, again, they're also people who would meet the criteria for public guardianship. So what does that tell me? Well, it's a problem, right? I mean, it's a complication, because these people are being served, but JFS doesn't want to continue to serve them for free. That's a problem, and they do meet the criteria for public guardianship. JFS took them because they probably met the criteria initially, and needed a slot, and there was no provider. And so the hospitals and DSS have tried to find a way around that. And I think the numbers likely indicate an unquantified, unmet need for public guardianship that exists all across the state. We're not seeing this for other providers because they don't have large private programs. But if they did, if they had significant private programs, we might be seeing much larger waiting lists there. So I just thought that, I think that's really interesting to me, and something that I think we are going to have to kind of understand as we think about what the need for public guardianship is. And those are the things I wanted to call to your attention. Does anybody have any questions about that? Here's a whole discussion of the JFS wait list.
Patty, this is Erica. I just wanted to commend you for the section on the misconceptions, because I think that's huge, and I think that there's a big misconception out there in the public that the public guardianship program is supposed to protect clients at all costs, and that the whole guardianship system is supposed to protect people at all costs, and the autonomy side gets lost in the shuffle. And so the public sees someone who is not in the best of circumstances and faults either the private or the public guardian for that, and the press also. So it's really a difficult balance. And I think if we could educate the public and legislators, it would be huge. And, you know, the whole idea is that sufficient attention must be paid to getting that balance and must continue to be paid. But what that actual balance is will differ case by case. So it's really hard that you took that on as a challenge. So thank you.
Oh. Well, thank you. I get concerned about it. Someday I hope to give you guys a report that sort of describes some of the referrals we get. We would definitely say we're seeing a change in the referrals, although I like to quantify things before I really assert them as the truth. yeah, I think there is, I get concerned when the clients are beginning to skew younger, and their disability, their issues might tend toward more a supported decision-making model. But there are no supporters available. And so people who are concerned for their well-being want them to have a guardian. And I'm sure we'll have lots of discussions about this going forward as supported decision-making. We learn more about supported decision-making in the state.
Exactly.
And that's more of a process. Yeah.
This is just one step in many.
So
for your updates, and this report has a lot of great information. Appreciate that. Any other questions, Patty?
This is Donna Smith. I do not have a question, but I do wish to commend Patty for this report. It is awesome, as well as the fact sheet. I would love to see that fact sheet provided throughout the state as a separate entity, because it is very important.
thank you.
Okay, the next item is the legislative committee report with Eric Wood.
Yes, thank you. I will give my legislative committee report based on the 6 items that were included in the board's platform last year. But I will say that most of them have already been covered several times, so I will skip through this pretty quickly. But sometimes it helps to clarify things when they're heard over again in a different way. So our first recommendation was funding for the 4-yearly public guardianship needs evaluation study. And I think that we've been advocating for that, as was said earlier, for many years. And even though it's in the code, there's never been sufficient funding allocated for it, and it hasn't been conducted since 2007. So the fact that it is in the governor's introduced budget for $75,000 is really outstanding. And of course, I know that, as Catherine said, it's not over till it's over. So we need to still keep our fingers crossed, but that's an important step. Secondly, we advocated for funding for public guardianship program slots to eliminate the waiting list. And we recommended at our meeting where we adopted the platform that this be phased in. And indeed, the governor's introduced budget includes the funding for the 300 new slots of the total 700 on the wait list. So that the 2 is a huge success. And I'm not surprised to hear Patty say that would be the largest increase in at least in the unrestricted slots. And so that's huge. And third, we recommended funding to eliminate the payment disparities among the program providers, because as Patty said, the slots have been tied to things like when they were created rather than what their current cost was. And the governor's introduced budget also included funding for the rebasing of these slot rates. And I should say that all 3 of those recommendations were also in the JLARC report. And I think that was an important factor in moving them forward. Our 4th recommendation was funding for a technical revision to the code, and the part of the code specifically that involves notifying the court when a local or regional program is out of compliance with the ratio. But that's not in reality the way the program is set up, and that provision is unneeded and actually confusing, and so requires a technical revision to change that. That was not, there was no nothing introduced on that this year. But as we look ahead to next year's platform, it might be something we might want to keep in mind. Fifth, we start in the last two recommendations, we looked beyond just the public guardianship program and looked a little more broadly at guardianship. And we recommended funding for a statewide court adult guardianship conservatorship database case management system out of the executive secretary of the court. And there's certainly a dire need for that type of consistent statewide data, not only in Virginia, but in just about every state. There was no budget amendment for that, but I do know that there is consideration, I know through Wings, of the OES applying for a grant for the development of that type of data system. And there is a request for proposals on guardianship out from the Administration for Community Living that might encompass that. And finally, the board recommended that DARS staff continue to participate actively in Wings to improve both public and private guardianship processes. And obviously that's not a legislative item either, but rather the board sought to support Wings efforts and to support the role of DARS in Wings. And indeed, Wings continues strong, is just about to engage in a strategic planning, continues with its three fairly robust committees, and meets 3 times a year. And Patty participates, Paige of APS also participates, and there's a large interdisciplinary group. So I think those were all good items on our platform next year, but I think that that was the first year that we had the board had a robust platform for a while, and we might want to sort of keep our ears tuned or our eyes opened, because we will be beginning to think about a platform for next year. Questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Erica. Our next agenda item is the regulatory process date for Charlotte.
Hi, thank you. I'm glad to be with you all again for this meeting. I just have a short update for you. You have a handout in your materials that gets into a little bit more detail, but the gist is that, as you might remember, we started a standard rulemaking process back in 2020 with a periodic review, determined we needed to amend the regulations. And so since you all last met, DARS published a notice of intended regulatory action, which we call a NORA, which basically publicly declares that we are intending to proceed with a rulemaking activity. That was open for 30 days. DARS did not receive any public comments in response to that NORA. So we are working internally and working with Patty on developing proposed regulations, which is the next step in the process. Patty and I have been waiting to see what ultimately comes out of the General Assembly, to see if there's anything we need to be considerate or consider in those proposed regulations. And then we have also been evaluating some more informal suggestions that JLARC made in terms of the public guardian program, and ways we might be able to weave those suggestions into the proposed regulations as well. Once we have that draft of the proposed regulations ready, we will share it with the advisory board and with the public guardian program providers to get their input. I anticipate that will be sometime this summer, but I do not have like a specific date in mind at this point. After we have taken the steps we need to share the proposed regulations with you and the providers and get some initial feedback, then DARS would proceed with the formal submission process for that, and that starts an executive review with other agencies that must be involved before those would actually be published for a 60-day public comment period. So I don't have a good timeline on how long that will take. It depends on when we finish our work and then when the other agencies who need to review it finish their work. But I just want you to know that work is continuing on this, and we are very much looking forward to getting your input on the proposed regulations, hopefully this summer. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Charlotte. Our other business that we have to take care of today is for the nominating committee needs to be appointed. There needs to be 3 members on the committee. And I believe last year we had James Allman, G. Phelan, and LaTroya Rockell. And I think the meeting is proposed for this coming before the next board meeting. So I think 22nd at 9 a.m. Do we have any interested members?
Just to let you know, you're breaking up a little bit.
My apologies. So just to repeat, we need to identify a nominating committee made up of 3 members, and wanted to see if we have any interested members today.
How long would the nominating committee be a nominating committee? I ask because I'm supposed to cycle off, I believe this summer.
George,
Monica, so the nominating committee will just be meeting once to determine the slate that will be presented to the board on June 22nd for voting for the next year. Anybody who's currently sitting on the board is eligible. And as I said, it's just one meeting. It will happen immediately before the next board meeting.
I would be happy to be on that committee.
I'll be on it also. That's okay, Jamal. My term is up at that meeting.
This is Susan Elmore. If you need a third, I'll do it.
Great, thank you. Any objections to any of the 3 members, Monica Karamanik, Judge Altman, and Susan Elmore? Christy, do you want to?
Thank you so much.
Appoint everybody?
Do we need to do any formally?
So probably, yes, we should probably have a motion and a vote.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the members of the nominating committee?
This is Kimberly King. I make a motion to approve the members of the nominating committee.
Do we have a second?
This is Donna Smith. I'll second it.
Okay, so the motion is to appoint Monica Karamanik, Judge Almond, and Susan Elmore to be the members of the nominating committee. I'll do a roll call vote. Judge Almond?
Yes.
Betty Doherty?
Yes.
Susan Elmore?
Yes.
Kimberly King?
Yes.
Monica Karamanik?
Yes.
Lindsay Pickrell?
Yes.
Sarah Ragland?
Yes.
Latroy Wattsburg,
Yes.
Donna Smith,
Yes.
Ming Trong,
Yes.
Erica Wood,
Yes.
and Christy Zed.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion is carried, and the three individuals will constitute the nominating committee. And I'll follow up with more information.
The next item is to review our future meeting dates. We have our next meeting on June 21st, and then a meeting September 13th, and then November 29th. And I am assuming, George, they're going to be in-person meeting.
That is the plan. So the current state of emergency expires next week. I think it's unlikely it'll be extended.
And without any further item on the agenda, I would like to adjourn the meeting. Thank you for your time today.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, George.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. See you in June.
Okay, George.